Conflict and cooperation. Every nation, state, or country has clearly defined territory and sovereignty over that territory. Sovereignty is supreme authority or power. Every country also has a central government. The central government takes care of matters that affect the whole country. This includes dealing with other countries' governments. Interactions between governments can take the form of conflict or cooperation. So the title of this section, when you look at countries dealing with other countries, you can be in conflict, you could have a dispute over territory, or in cooperation. The United States tries to cooperate as long as other governments have democracies or are not infringing on human rights. We look at their policies for how they're treating their citizens. We want them to be a fair government. Most countries have a foreign policy, a set of goals that describing how a country's government plans to interact with other countries' governments. Foreign, again, means another country. So foreign policy is how we deal with other countries. This is part of the executive branch. Our president sets the tone for how we're going to interact with other governments, other countries' governments. So it's goals describing how a country's government plans to interact with other countries' governments. A country's foreign policy reflects its values and intentions. Geographic factors such as location, physical features, and distribution of natural resources can influence foreign policy. Often foreign policy can be economical, like if we need oil from other countries, our policy might change. A country's foreign policy can lead to conflict with other countries. Wars and fighting begin for many reasons. Some wars begin as conflicts over control of land or resources like oil or water. Others result from religious disagreements, political revolutions, a change in government, or conflict between ethnic groups. Wars can lead to widespread death and destruction. If you scroll down, make sure that you're reading all of the boxes. Public health organizations. There is an International Red Cross and the Red Crescent. Cross means Christian, and the crescent is the symbol for Muslim, and they work together. This is an international organization with both religions, providing medical aid, food, and other relief services to victims of war or natural disasters. They're often also helping in the refugee camps, since we're reading the book Refugee, and during many of those time periods and those incidences in real life, they were helping the people, the refugees that were leaving their home. World Health Organization, also known as WHO, so you'll see it in the news. It has really been active recently because they're also the ones that are fighting disease, so they're fighting the virus, especially among the world's poor by providing health information, medical training, and medicine. COVID-19 isn't the first time. WHO has helped in many places, as the Zika virus in Central America, the outbreak of Ebola in Africa, and they were helping to provide medical information using science to best treat the disease and try to stop it from spreading. Now they're using all the scientific information that they can to make recommendations to governments around the world. So WHO is international, has scientists, doctors from all different countries around the world working together for the good of the globe. It's global. Cooperation. Many people view the world as a global community in which people should cooperate. Cooperate means to work together and avoid conflict. So help others, avoid conflict. This cooperation may take a form of a treaty, a formal agreement written down between two or more countries. Some treaties are agreements to help defend other countries. Other treaties are agreements to limit the harmful effects of war or to stop war. For example, the Geneva Convention lists rules for the proper treatment of wounded soldiers, prisoners, and civilians. The United Nations is the largest international organization that works for peace. Nearly every country in the world belongs to the UN. Governments send representatives, diplomats, to the UN to engage in diplomacy. Diplomacy is managing communication and relationships between countries. So somebody that goes to school to learn how to be a politician, it is a set job. You learn to be a public servant. You study how to resolve conflicts. You take years of classes. You often volunteer and serve in interns. So we want, hopefully, to elect politicians who have want to work on diplomacy, that want to work in this cooperation with other countries, with other states, with all different groups of people. So there is a degree in political science. To be a politician, a government job, it takes skills in learning how to resolve conflicts. Diplomacy is that communication and relationship, learning how to communicate and solve problems with other countries without it leading to violence. So political science majors train in those skills. The UN, United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, lists the rights that all people should have, including life, liberty, and security. The UN works to protect these rights around the world, especially in very poor countries. Governments also cooperate for reasons other than avoiding conflict. For example, governments often work with one another to improve their countries' economies through trade. So trade is cooperation between countries. International trade can provide new goods and markets. Trade agreements involving multiple countries have become common in recent years. The North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, was one of the first ones in the 90s for free trade, allowing us to trade between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And then we expanded. We've signed a lot of free trade agreements to eliminate those tariffs that we talked about when we talked about economics, those taxes on imported goods. We eliminated that with free trade. So we have several trade agreements with other countries, including China and many others. Governments also cooperate for those reasons, those economic reasons. And then economic organizations. There is a World Bank, which provides loans for projects aimed at promoting economic development, and especially in those really poor developing nations. International Monetary Fund, known as the IMF, seeks to prevent and resolve economic crisis by offering advice, information, technical training, and loans. So if a country is really struggling, there's a hard economic time happening, the IMF will send in financial advisors, people that will work with them to keep peace in that country, because if an economy is crashing and people are desperate, often that can turn into violence and conflict as well. So all of these organizations help to keep peace. Humanitarian organizations, United Nations, we talked about, seeks to encourage international cooperation and achieve world peace, but sometimes faces criticism. The UN does have peacekeeping troops. They've been in countries like Bosnia and others to try to resolve conflicts. CARE International is a nonprofit organization that seeks to end world poverty through development and self-help. So they will take volunteers in to kind of develop services and goods, try to give the country or the area a plan to come out of that economic crisis. All of these are good, working on cooperation and the humanitarian needs in the world.